Today on the Real Estate Show, I have Erica Henson with me, and we are talking about different types of deeds, deeds of trust, which are the security instrument, and why a quitclaim deed might not be exactly what you think it is. If you are an agent or a real estate professional looking for tips and tricks about real estate, then this episode is for you. So, Erica, today we are going to get into the different types of deeds and deeds of trust. Let's just dive right in. So, off the top of my head, I'm thinking we've got general warranty deed, special warranty deed, quitclaim deed. So that's it, right?
That's it. Those are the three main ones. There's others in North Carolina, but those are the three main ones we see every day, in and out.
Well, everybody's always writing in or, calling our office asking about ladybird deeds.
They are.
Like, that's not really what you think it is. Caution. Yeah. Well, do you want to start off telling us a little bit about the general warranty deed, since that's the most common in residential transactions?
Sure. So a general warranty deed, as you stated earlier, is quote unquote the gold standard, right? Mm-hmm. So that is what your residential buyers are looking for and what is in the standard offer to purchase for residential property. And this is where the seller agrees to warrant everything in the chain of title as far back as we can search. Mm-hmm. So the buyer would walk away with that warranty that the property that they are getting is free and clear, and the seller will warrant that. Seller will defend that and indemnify the buyer if they find anything later on in the chain of title.
Yeah. If you're just using the North Carolina standard offer to purchase, like you said, that's what's going to be specified there. We'll see in commercial transactions, or if negotiated, the use of a special warranty deed, which has some warranties. It can be confusing because a general warranty deed, people are like, oh, that sounds basic. I want the special one. Not realizing that it's actually less warranties than the general warranty deed. So when you hear special warranty, think limited warranty rather than enhanced or better. So it's the seller essentially taking on the types of warranties of the general warranty deed, but limiting the scope, saying, I'll defend you against anything that happened in my tenure, my time of ownership. But what happened before me, I
make no guarantees.
Yeah, no promises there. So we'll see that in commercial quite often, just because parties want to limit their risk, and those are much more negotiated contracts. And certainly a buyer and seller in a residential contract could also negotiate for that, but it's not standard. And, kind of North Carolina recognizes the general warranty deed as the gold standard to get the kind of like the closest to pristine title as you can get, which, as we know, doesn't exist anymore. But, if the parties really felt strongly they wanted to amend it, otherwise you could amend the contract to reflect that. And that brings us to our last kind of deed that we're going to dive into, which is the quitclaim deed, or as some people call it, the quick claim deed, which is not a thing.
Not a thing. It's the quitclaim.
Tell us about that.
Yep. So the quitclaim deed is where the seller says, I'll give you whatever interest that I do have in this property, but I'm not going to warrant anything. Mm-hmm. I make no representations about the property. I will not defend you. I will not indemnify you, but I'll give you what I do have.
Yep.
So it's basically, giving up any interest but making no warranties.
Yeah. I like to call it the get what you get and don't pitch a fit deed. And it's also the seller saying, I'll give you whatever I've got, even if that's nothing. So if they have nothing to give, you're not getting anything by that deed. So a quitclaim, it's a proceed with caution. It's not necessarily a non-starter, but you'd have to do a careful title search to make sure that the seller actually had an interest in the property and to see what risks may be lurking behind that I'm not going to have any warranties for. And the quitclaim deed can be used in a lot of contexts. Sometimes family members will do that between each other.
Spouses.
Spouses. If you're doing it between spouses, you got to make sure you have your special language, or else it's, you may not have accomplished your goal. But people also will think quitclaim deed because they hear it and it's a unique name. They think that is what they're supposed to be getting. And we try to dig into, if somebody calls our office asking for a quitclaim deed, we as attorneys are trying to figure out, what are you trying to accomplish here? because 9 times out of 10, that's probably not really what they wanted. They wanted some other type of deed, but they just heard a buzzword and they're like, that's what I need to ask the attorney for. I think it's kind of funny when people are like, they feel very confident in what they say they want. And we're like, what are you talking about? Especially when they're like adamant that they can only accept a quick claim deed because they think that means it happens fast.
Yeah. Or they want the most plain and simple option out there, I think sometimes is what they're trying to accomplish. They want it fast. They want it plain. They want it simple. They don't want any bells and whistles, but they don't really understand what's behind the quick claim. And maybe what they're getting is no real interest at all. So I agree with you. They think they're getting something quick and easy and simple, but it's not always as simple as it seems.
And they also may think that the other types of deeds are longer or take longer to draft. Deeds are 2 pages, 3 pages tops, unless you've got a crazy long legal description. The drafting of the instrument is really not the thing that's the difficult part. It's figuring out the things that lurk behind. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about how the deeds can be used in combination with each other. We see this often in commercial contexts, but also in residential. You'll never hear an attorney tell a buyer not to get a survey. I mean, we recommend those in every transaction where a survey applies. And a buyer may get a survey and it reveals like, okay, well, the legal description is from 1904. We've got better technology now. So we draft a new legal description based off of the new survey. And the seller may say, listen, I will give you a general warranty deed for the legal description I received because I had my warranties from my seller. So I feel comfortable giving general warranties as to what I know I got. But I will quit claim to you by a separate non-warranty deed the legal description from the new survey. That way I'm giving to you whatever interest I have acquired in those areas where they may differ. Because there could be a chance that, when you're doing a legal description where it says go 50 paces to the oak tree and then goes, north, blah, 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 it's going to be a little bit different than what a current survey would reveal. So that way the seller's like, whatever I've got, I'm giving to you. I'm not trying to retain any small pieces where they may overlap or differ, but I didn't acquire it that way, so I'm not comfortable warranting it. And I think that makes sense.
Sure.
We see that. And then you brought up another situation that we saw recently with the lake lot. Will you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So the seller owned a lot both above the 760 contour line, and then the seller also owned some property, a small parcel under the water line. So in this case, the seller was willing to give a general warranty deed for that parcel that was above the water. However, they were not comfortable giving the general warranty for the underwater parcel. Instead, the seller preferred to give a special warranty deed for the parcel underneath. And the reasoning probably is that the title couldn't be traced back. So the seller wasn't comfortable making the full warranties to defend and warrant that underwater parcel when we couldn't trace back the title as far as the seller would like for us to be able to. So good compromise there that the buyer was able to get both parcels, but a little bit different scenario with the deeds in that one.
Yeah. Now let's talk also about deeds of trust, because people get confused about this a lot. And Ben Thomas used to always ask, like anytime somebody would start working, he would be like, all right, what's the difference in a deed and a deed of trust? Do you know the answer to that? And that was kind of like, you get about a week working here before you get quizzed on what's the difference in a deed and deed of trust, because it can be confusing because it uses some of the same terminology. And people will think that the deed of trust is their ownership instrument, and it's not. So will you tell us a little bit about, generally speaking, what is a deed of trust? What's its purpose?
Yeah, sure. So I think after almost 2 years now, I know. No, I'm just kidding.
So here's your quiz.
Here's my pop quiz. So a deed of trust is what we use in North Carolina when the grantor or the borrower, so someone who borrows money to buy a piece of property, they grant a lien upon the property to their lender, the beneficiary. And what it says is, if I pay and if I abide by all the covenants in this deed of trust, then I stay in the property. But if I don't, then the trustee, who's also a party, can foreclose, can take the property on behalf of the beneficiary. So it's essentially where the borrower, the property owner, grants a lien upon the property for the money that they owe.
Yeah, and a lender is not going to let you borrow money without you signing it.
No.
So it's not optional.
It's how they secure their payment. That's another way I say it at the closing table. Yes.
Yeah. I say it a lot like that too. Like your promissory note is your promise to pay the money back. And then the deed of trust is your security for that promise. Because if you're not paying the money back, it gives the lender the right to take the house and, basically in lieu of repayment. And, that it's a long document. Even the shorter ones are like 12 pages. The longer ones are like 17 to 20. And it gets all into the rights of the trustee to start the foreclosure process. If you've got rights of redemption, North Carolina does. We won't go into that because that's not really our topic for today. Some limits on what you can do with the property. And if you think about it, it makes sense. I joke that the lender says you can't have a meth lab because they don't want any inherently dangerous activities that would blow up the thing that they're taking their security interest in. If you look at a piece of land versus a piece of land with a house on it, the value goes up. So if you destroy the house, then what they have a security interest in, the value is decreased significantly. People tend to like, okay, I get it. That makes sense. I knew about foreclosure, just didn't know it took this many words to say that.
Yeah. And I like to break down the deed of trust because people will ask at the closing table, what is this? What am I signing? And so I kind of think about it in 3 parts.
Okay.
The first part, it defines the parties. And there are 3 parties too. There's the grantor, the borrower, the beneficiary, who's the lender, and the trustee. So it defines the parties. It defines the debt obligation and whether it's a primary residence or an investment property, what have you. And then it has the covenants and the promises, covenants, where both parties agree to certain things. And that's where what you were just talking about is kind of buried in all of that language. What do you promise to do? Well, you promise that you're going to keep insurance on the property. The borrower is going to abide by all, applicable laws and regulations. They are going to agree to make their monthly payment. Well, if you don't do those things, though, then the lender or the trustee can start the foreclosure process. They can take their security interest from you.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I like to think about it and break it down into layman's terms so it's not so overwhelming. Because like you said, some of them can be 5 pages, some are 18. And for someone, especially a first-time home buyer who sees 18 pages and you're not explaining everything to them, they're looking at me like a deer in headlights, like, what am I signing? So that's kind of how I approach it with the buyers.
Yeah, I really like how you broke that down, especially like for people that are not accustomed to lengthy legal documents. They might not realize it's 4 pages of definitions, so that makes it a little less scary when they realize, oh, not every single thing in here is like we're going to sue you till the cows come home. Some of it's just saying, grantor means this and you are the grantor.
Yes.
So it's a little less stressful. So I love that you do it that way. I might have to adopt that. I've just been telling like the same stupid legal jokes for the last 7 years. And it's like, I got to come up with something new. The agents come in and they see us flip into the deed of trust and they're like, here we go. Here we go. I know what she's about to say. The deed of trust, it's similar to people that move here from other states would know this as a mortgage. And for most purposes, it's the same. The deed of trust adds a little bit of a layer because it adds the trustee as a party. And before we started recording, I was like, I'm not going to go into all of the legal mumbo jumbo about the differences. So I promise to keep that. I promise I will not do that. But there are some slight differences that have to do with like title theory in our state. And it's really not important so long as you as a borrower know that it means if you're not keeping your promise, then the lender can use that instrument to foreclose so that they're recouping their investment in some way, shape, or form. So basically, if you keep your promises, you get left alone. You get the privilege of continuing to repay.
You get to stay. Yes.
Yeah.
And one interesting thing for people who are buying multiple parcels, or if you buy a home on a parcel and you buy the lot next door, right? But then, and you mortgage the property or there's a deed of trust against it, and you decide that you want to sell that vacant lot next door, you have to do what's called a release. And so a lot of times we see a request for deed or things like that, and the seller doesn't understand that the property has to be released from the deed of trust. And I bring this up because it can hold up a closing. It can land a seller in some hot water. So if you're looking to sell and you have a deed of trust on more than one parcel, or you want to parcel off a small portion of a larger tract, you need to check with your lender first, because they have a lien on that through the deed of trust that you executed when you borrowed against that property.
Yeah, and if you don't pay it off or get that partial release, either by paying them some money, or if you're lucky, they don't require it, or they let you substitute something in the place of what you're giving away, and you try to deed away that to the buyer, well, the buyer's taking a property that's got a deed of trust on it and could get foreclosed against for a debt obligation that they never agreed to pay.
They didn't agree to. Yep.
Yeah, that's a good point. We see that, unfortunately, a decent amount. So those deeds of trust, they get you.
They serve a purpose. We need them, but
Yes.
they'll get you if you don't comply with your promises in there.
I think agents, if you're listening to this and you've got buyers that, like, you've tried to explain this till the cows come home and they're just not getting it, feel free to share this with them. Maybe we'll say it just slightly different than they're used to hearing. Everybody learns and responds differently, but hopefully you picked up something from this that you didn't know. I feel like the information about the partial release and the quit claim deed information is stuff that people forget about a lot. So,
and with the deed of trust, it can be a daunting document, right? We've already talked about that. It can be 18 pages or more. But if you think about it from the lender's perspective, they are lending you a lot of money, and they want a lot of protection. They want everything in writing. So maybe that's another way to explain it to your buyer. While it might seem daunting, the lender needs protection. So you have to agree to abide by their rules through the deed of trust. It's another way to look at it.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. Thank you for joining us again today, Erica.
Absolutely.
I think that was a great explainer on the types of deeds and deeds of trust, and I look forward to doing it again.
All right. Thank you.